Welcome to episode 6 of the Beyond the Bench podcast with Nick Ingram. Today we have the opportunity to talk to Kirk Haston. He grew up in Tennessee before going to Indiana University to play basketball for Coach Knight. If you're wondering, it means our third straight Hoosier basketball player to join the show. Obviously, I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk to everyone. I'm really excited for this one just because of Kirk's background and also what he's doing now. He's in politics with the Tennessee State House, so I hope that that's an interesting topic that we're able to cover today. And I just want to thank you all for watching, and let's go beyond the bench. Today, we're joined by Kirk Haston. Kurt, thank you for coming on and talking to me today and talking to the viewers. I'm hoping that we're able to kind of get through a really cool conversation here.
Hey, looking forward to it. I appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. So let's just start off talking about high school for you. You went to Perry County High School. It's kind of, for people that don't know, it's located between like Nashville and Memphis, at least where I saw it on the map, down there in Tennessee. But you had a lot of success in high school.
Yeah, we had it's a tough tradition to live up to. Here at Perry County High School, we've had a really rich basketball history. We kind of had the Linden High School back in the 50s was kind of the Milan of Tennessee. No classifications back in the 50s, and we had close to around, I think, 100 high school students, and they won 3 straight state championships against schools that were 7-8 times our size. So it was always hard to live up to. Then in the 70s, Mike Rhodes, who was an All-American at Vanderbilt, played here and won 2 state titles. So when our turn came in the 90s to try to carry the mantle, there was some pressure there, but we had a really good group and was able to at least hang up one banner.
Yeah, I mean, you won the state championship your senior year, undefeated, 37-0. You won the Tennessee Mr. Basketball. What was that like during that season, and what was the community support for your team like?
It was pretty incredible year. It was, to really kind of fully understand it and appreciate it. Back in my junior year in '96, we were ranked number 1 in the state, and we had a record of 29 and 3, or sorry, 30-3, and got beat in the state championship game by a last second shot. And in that championship game, I had a shot at the buzzer to win the game and missed it. And so it ended up being one of the most important, probably, turning points of my athletic career. Was just the next day was a Sunday. Got home from church, and my granddad, who's a preacher, he preaches at the church that I was at then, and granddad, who played at Lipscomb and was a coach at Freed-Hardeman University, showed up at my door that afternoon, and I was just kind of moping around the house, and he said, "Let's get back to work." And we went back out and started shooting and doing stuff that next day after that state title loss. And me and the rest of my teammates were just maniacal the rest of the summer and the rest of that year. And I honestly don't think we would have gone undefeated if it wasn't for that loss in the championship game. It just really did help us focus. And I hated it for the seniors that were there in '96. We deserved to win a title for them. They deserved to win a title. But for us, that going undefeated was kind of the was a little bit of an achievement to put towards, like, that was kind of for '96's team. We want to do that for that '96 team. So but the community support is just kind of what you see in the movies, people just packing the parking lot when you get back and waiting on the bus, and it was pretty fun. It's hard to put a price tag on the feeling that gave you as a kid.
Absolutely, and it's actually similar. I talked to Sharon Wilkerson last episode, and at Jeffersonville High School, which is in Indiana, they did the same thing. They lost their junior season and then won their senior season. So it's kind of interesting. I feel like there is a lot to be learned from those losses. Like you said, that it's kind of maybe the reason that you did go undefeated.
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, I think it's one of the greatest things about kids growing up playing sports is just learning how to deal with difficulties and just learning how to deal with losses. I mean, as you grow older, you realize how many lessons that you're applying to your daily life, whether in your job or with your family. in situations that you're really drawing on that experience that you had playing sports growing up as a kid.
For sure, and I think it's interesting too. What's the I don't know if you've probably not watched a whole lot of high school basketball in Indiana, but it's got the tradition is there for sure. In Tennessee, is basketball kind of as big as it is in Indiana, or is it kind of like a secondary sport?
It just depends on what area. I mean, high school football is huge in Tennessee, but especially in East Tennessee. But I would say that the basketball is probably, it is second. It's first in a lot of communities. I mean, we're not packing. I've seen enough of Indiana high school basketball to realize that it's on a totally different level of some of the stadiums. I was listening to a podcast the other day, the Rewatchables, about Blue Chips, and they were talking about where they film Blue Chips, and you've got Neon Boudreaux and all these guys that are playing at it's supposed to be a college campus, and they actually are filming it, I think, in a high school gymnasium in Indiana, is where they filmed that a lot of those scenes. So it's a totally different level at Indiana for high school basketball, but Tennessee has got a pretty strong track record too.
For sure. In high school, did you only play basketball? Did you play other sports? What did high school kind of look like for you?
I played baseball. My freshman year was a pretty good first baseman. It was hard to overthrow a 6'9" first baseman with a 7'2" wingspan. And Don Mattingly was my guy growing up, so I could pick a lot of short hops over at first. I pitched a little bit, but you realize in high school that a 72-mile-an-hour fastball is just not going to take you very far. And so I started focusing a lot after that at freshman year, mainly on basketball. But I did play golf all 4 years in high school. That's always been, a close secondary passion. And probably these days with not playing as much basketball, it's definitely my first sports passion, probably as far as playing and watching.
Yeah, and Jerry told me about your golf. He told me that you like to play a lot, so we'll get into that a little bit later.
Sure.
But I definitely want to talk about that. I'm a huge golfer myself, and so I think that'll be cool. But let's just talk a little bit about your recruitment. Who was interested school-wise in you coming out of high school?
The offers that I had junior year / senior year was Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Ohio State, Michigan State. That was really the list my junior year. Indiana didn't recruit me my junior year, and I was really set to commit to Vanderbilt. It was about an hour from home, and I was interested in playing in the SEC, and Van Bredikoff, he was the coach then at the time at Vanderbilt, did a pretty odd thing. Offered me a scholarship my junior year, and don't know exactly what happened, but rescinded the offer before my senior year, and so I was pretty set to commit there, and pulled the offer. I was told later by a coach, a friend of mine that was an assistant coach at the time there that recruited me, Ron Bargetzi, that was one of the things that kind of led to him deciding that that he didn't need to really stay on as coach much more if the guys that he was telling him he needed to recruit and sign, he decided against it after offering. It was just kind of a tough situation, and so and then I started looking at Tennessee, and Kevin O'Neill was there at the time. I was really, went on down the line with looking at them, and then they basically had so many guys commit. They had a huge class come in at the time, and they didn't have a lot of spaces available. Charles Hathaway came in, I think Tony Harris, and so that those two in-state opportunities kind of dried up, and so Kevin O'Neill actually called Coach Knight and said, "Hey, I think that there's a kid down here that we were looking at that would fit pretty well with the way you play." Coach O'Neill and Coach Knight were pretty friendly, and so Coach Knight sent an assistant down to watch me practice once. And then Coach Knight came down and watched a game. Let's see, I think it was probably around November at the smallest gym that we played in on the road in Clifton, Tennessee, right on the Tennessee River. he left at halftime. I had a pretty good first half, but you never know what coaches are looking for, and so never did talk to him that night. And asked my high school coach afterwards, what if he'd heard anything, and he said no. And I'm in English class the next morning, and I get a call to the office. I've got a phone call, and so I leave Miss Ezel's English class, and I walk down and take the phone call in Mr. Morris's office, our principal. Pick up the phone, and Coach Knight is just like not much for pleasantries. Never did, how are you doing? He just was like right to the point and said, Kirk, I came to watch you play last night. I'd like to have you play at Indiana. What do you think about that? And I said, Coach, if you think I can play for you, that's what I want to do. And he said, we'll send you the paperwork, and hung up. It was about a 45-second conversation. I never took a trip to Bloomington before committing. Never met Coach Knight before committing. Actually, never even saw him at the game the night he was at Clifton, because he showed up like during warmups, and walked down to. Didn't have a lot of cell phones back then. Walked down to the payphone at the lobby of our gym at the high school and called my mom at Lobelville Elementary and got her out of her classroom and broke the news to my mom that I was going to Indiana. And that was the recruiting. That was the 2-day recruiting whirlwind that I decided to go to Indiana.
So when was the first time that you stepped on campus then, if you'd never been on a visit?
Well, I'd never been there. So they send the paperwork, and somebody actually had this picture the other day they showed me that was in our local paper, the Buffalo River Review. Signing day is a big thing now, and you have all these, bunch of people, stage and curtains and, balloons. And I'm signing to go to Indiana. It's me and my mom and my high school coach, and we're just standing in the lobby of the high school lobby. It was like 4 minutes in one photo, and I signed the papers, and they probably faxed them. I guess maybe they mailed them. So as soon as they get my commitment papers, they set up like the next weekend for me to fly up to Bloomington to take a campus visit and to meet Coach and to see Assembly Hall and meet some of the players, and so that leads me to my first plane ride that I've ever taken. They send their plane down, the Indiana plane, down to Lexington, Tennessee, and I get on my first airplane ride ever in Lexington, Tennessee. Fly out on a little like 6-seat airplane, scared to death, and fly up to Bloomington. And I get up there at about 10 o'clock, and one of the assistant coaches picks me up and takes me to Assembly Hall, straight to Assembly Hall. It's like 10:45, 10:30 at night, and I'm pulling up to the front door of Assembly Hall. And I get out, and Coach Knight's, waiting there for us. And so first time I meet Coach Knight is at like almost 11 o'clock on like a Friday night. And I'm, shaking his hand in front of Assembly Hall, and he's like, let's go take a look at the gym. I'm like, okay. So we go down, and we're standing down there on the court, and the assistant coach is running around trying to figure out how to turn the lights on at 11 o'clock at night. And then all of a sudden, just like bam, all the lights in Assembly Hall come on, and I'm standing at center court with Coach Knight, and just boom. And it's just, something out of a movie scene in my mind of just seeing the size of that place. I'd seen a lot of games on television, but it just doesn't do it justice of kind of how many people can sit in that place and how steep the seating is. So that was the first time that I'd met Coach Knight, been in Assembly Hall, flown on an airplane. And then I guess just to test to see if I was really dedicated to being a Hoosier, they made me stay with Michael Lewis. And so I spent 2 nights with Michael Lewis at his apartment, and he didn't scare me off. And so I guess they figured that if I could survive him for a couple days, I'd be okay to come to stay in Bloomington permanently.
For sure. And I mean, it's just crazy how all that worked out. I never would have imagined that you would never have been on campus or really talked to Coach Knight. I mean, you said you had a short phone conversation with him, but what kind of in your mind, what was going through your mind when you got that call, and what made you decide just so quickly that that's what you wanted to do for the next, 3 years?
The main thing, the thing that I had the biggest fear of when I was a kid and in high school, and I knew that I had been. I mean, anytime that you're 6'9" and have some coordination, and can shoot a little bit, you've been given a gift. You've been given a blessing to deal with, and I just was always terrified that I was just not going to max out this opportunity. Like, I mean, it's just like, man, most kids don't get this chance to do something with this. And so I really was like, it just clicked with me to go play for somebody that was just really demanding, and just somebody that I just thought, man, he will wring me dry. Whatever talent that is inside of me, he will squeeze until it just all comes out, one way or the other. And so that just spoke to me. I mean, and I just I playing in Class A basketball, and we barely had a weight room at the high school. I just knew that I needed to go somewhere, that I needed to be pushed, and needed somewhere that would try to get me as tough as, just get me as tough as I could be, because I knew, coming from Class A and being, wringing wet, 220 pounds, to play in the Big Ten. I just knew I needed to go somewhere that was going to push the envelope with my development.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it was a really good decision for you. Obviously, your freshman season, you'd average almost 10 points a game and start 13 of those games. Going into your freshman year, what were kind of the expectations from you, but also from the coaches? Did you expect to have a pretty major role, or were you kind of just or going into the season, what was kind of the expectations there?
I had no idea. No idea. Like, I mean, in practice, the red team was the main team in practice, and I was on the white team most of the time. And so I felt like I was competing pretty well. I felt like that the practices had been going well. Of course, I had redshirted, and so I'd had a full year of practice. And then you go in and you finally are in practices that count, ready to get prepared for games. But nobody ever told me anything. They didn't say, "Hey, be ready. We're going to give you about 10 minutes a game. We're going to give you this again," whatever. And so I had no indication that I would play at all year, much less the first game. And so my mom and my granddad came up to the first game. It was at the Kentucky. It was at Kentucky. It was at the RCA Dome, and I think it was Seton Hall. And my mom told me later that she was just like, it was the most relaxed she's ever been to go into one of my games, because every game that she went to was kind of like nervous about, how I would play or whatever. She's like, I just wasn't nervous at all because I knew you weren't going to play. And I had no indication to tell her any different, or have her expect anything different. And they were sitting there, and about 6 minutes into the game, Coach Knight sends me in, and like, my granddad kind of like nudges her, like, that I'm going in the game, and she's like, "Are you kidding me?" She was like halfway disappointed. She's like, I've got to be nervous now. And the first game just couldn't have gone any better. I mean, we won. I think I ended up with, I think I had like maybe 12 or 13 points and 7 or 8 rebounds, but it was just a solid game. I'd have to look back and see what it was, but it went great. And Coach Knott, he honestly, he saw something in me that I don't really think I even saw myself early on. He told my granddad my sophomore year, and granddad didn't even tell me this until years later. He said that he actually come down to Tennessee and was like doing some fishing down in Tennessee with my granddad and some folks, and he said if Kirk will listen to me and do what he said, what I say for him to do, he'll be an All-American. And my granddad was like, whatever. My granddad believed in me and everything, but he was just like, really? And I didn't see that either, but he did. And so that's why it worked out so great to go play for somebody like that.
I think that's one of the things about Coach Knight that you hear from everyone, is that he had an eye for who he wanted. He built his team. I think that now you see a lot of coaches. It's happened in Indiana recently. They go out and they just get the bigger names, the 5-star recruits. But Coach Knight actually knew how to build a team to get the guys that he wanted that would mesh well together. And I think that's really what made him successful. But I guess my question for you was, that kind of Coach Knight's style to not really let people know? I mean, you like you said, you really didn't have any indication that you were playing. Is that how it was for everyone?
From my memory and from talking with guys, I really think that he did that a lot. I think that it was something that he liked. he liked to keep you on your toes and competing and feeling like that you were, one or two bad mental mistakes or attitude mistakes away from like, hey, we've got somebody else that's ready to go. And if you think about it, it's a really great way to make sure that everybody on the team 1 through 12 is engaged because they realize, hey, at any moment in time, if he's seeing me produce in practice, or if he thinks that I've got he could put you in there to do something or to try. And so nothing was ever set in stone or locked in. And so I think that it was at least beneficial for me.
And after your freshman season, I mean, you were getting ready, prep for a big sophomore year, redshirt sophomore, I should say. Your mother passes away in a tragic tornado. What was that like for you, kind of that time period in your life? And how did you keep pushing forward and keep playing basketball?
I honestly, there were days where I just didn't know if it was possible. I've got to give a lot of credit, of the team. Yeah, if it wasn't for just Tim Garl, the trainer there at the time, I think he just now retired. He was a big part of helping me through that. He set me up with I didn't want to do it, but he said, this is something you really need to do. Set me up with a counselor there in Bloomington that really helped me a lot. And just that Indiana basketball family just really did embrace me during that time. And of course, my granny and granddad back home was a big part of all that too. But uh, you know, it's one of the things that I've been able to tell a lot of people that have experienced some tragic losses in their lives is that what finally started helping me get through that, at least that part, was just realizing that when it's not as bad a thing as you think when something hurts that bad. It just means that you're at a level of care and love with somebody that led to that. And so you can't have one without the other. And so yeah, it was really it was really a motivation though to go on and just try to max out and to make payoff all the AAU basketball tournaments she took me to, and all the practices and all the games that she pushed herself to be able to make happen as a single mom. And so I really just wanted to try to do a lot of things in her honor going forward. And it would have been hard to do that if it hadn't been for that really close knit team support that I had in Bloomington.
Absolutely. And I mean, like you said, a lot of people helped you through that, but that's kind of the way it is at Indiana. I'm sure that everyone was on your side, and you come back and you played really well your sophomore and junior year. Sorry, you averaged about 15 points a game and led some of the better Indiana teams during the time there. So what was that like during those 2 years, kind of being a leader on those teams?
Yeah, it was really interesting to have somebody believe in you enough to put you in some of those leadership roles, and to have, I'll never forget the meeting of having with Coach Knott, and sitting down with him and saying, and him telling me, he's like, listen, I want you to be the captain of this team. And it was just something that never in a million years thought that I would hear Coach Knott say to me. It was just, but it the best way though, the best way to say it is that you just cannot be a good leader unless you're willing to be a great servant. And I feel like I think that I learned a lot that freshman year, that redshirt freshman year, of like having basketball. I know sounds dramatic, but kind of taken away from you. You're used to playing games, you're used to doing it, and then those games are gone. And it put me in a mindset of just like trying to do everything else really well, and turn into practices, make the practices your games. And so I don't think that I would have been able to step into some of that leadership role with some of those other guys on the team if it hadn't been for that redshirt year, and really going through that learning experience.
For sure. And obviously you went through something. Coach Knight gets fired after the season. You have a new coach come in. How was that different going from someone like Coach Knight, who was such a kind of a polarizing figure, not only in basketball, but just within the university, to him being gone and someone else coming in to kind of replace him?
Yeah, I mean, talking about different times, how fast would that transfer portal have filled up this day and age if if the coach that you came there to play for is all of a sudden let go? Um, you know, I have to give Dane Fife a lot of credit on this. I really feel like that he was the linchpin that was going to keep the team together for that next year, or it was going to be if he transferred, like there was, really I mean, I think that he was down the line of really thinking about some schools. I mean, he had a lot of good connections to a lot of schools that were interested in him, and I really felt like if he left, it was going to lead to an onslaught of transfers from a lot of our core group there. So I remember, and it was probably more to do with just his own personal feelings and his own family's advice or what. But I know that I was giving him the hard sell and trying my best to recruit him to stay at Indiana. One, because I thought he was a great player and had a really good basketball mind. Even though he's a giant smart aleck, he and I were really good friends. And but I just felt like that group had some really special moments ahead of them, and if we could stay together. And so it was interesting. I mean, I remember getting called out of class and having like the juniors and seniors at the time being called to a meeting with the athletic director and being asked, like, who did we want to have put into that place that would keep the team there. And that's just such an unusual set of circumstances to be put in when you're 19, 18, 19, 20 years old, and feel like, man, there's kind of a lot riding on this conversation, some of these decisions that are coming up. But I was glad that Coach Davis and Coach Trelaw stepped up and were willing to take on those roles of staying on and keeping the group together. And and it led us to that year being a Big Ten, being in the Big Ten championship game in the Big Ten tournament. And of course the next year after that led they had an incredible magical run to a championship game.
So looking back on it, if you could have stayed for that fourth year, I know this is a tough question,
Oh, there it
probably,
is.
instead of going,
I'm out of
instead
here.
of,
I'll see.
no, but
No.
seriously, if you could have stayed for that fourth year instead of going to the NBA, would you, looking back on it, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a mind decision, not necessarily a heart decision, because I loved it there. I wanted to stay there. Just loved my teammates and loved the college atmosphere, and my entire dream as a kid was to make a run in NCAA tournament. My junior year, when we got put out, we got beat by Kent State in that first game in the first round at San Diego. I, I remember, like, we had a pretty good game. They had two smaller guards, and smaller guards gave us a lot of trouble that year. The Iowa, if you look back, Iowa was the same way. They had I think maybe Dean Oliver, but they had any team that had like a smaller, quicker guard always gave us trouble. And Kent State was just a terrible matchup for us. But anyhow, I had written on my shoes like the numbers, like 64, 32. I had all the numbers down to 2, and I was going to cross them off dramatically, each round. And I was like this. I was thinking, what would get me on one shining moment? I know, if I write in giant red letters the numbers on the side of my shoes, and I'll cross them off as we go. And I never got to cross off a single number, And so, but I would have loved to have been a part of that team. I still think that it was probably, for long term, for me and my family, it was probably the wise decision, just because to be honest with you, um, you know, Coach Davis, he didn't recruit me. I never did feel a really close connection. I was uh, I got benched there. I didn't. I kind of got set and lost my starting job for a couple games after I'd gotten injured. I'd sat out a game because of turf toe, and then when I came back, it took the 2 or 3 games. I was still coming off the bench, and I was still leading the scoring and rebounding, but I couldn't get my starting job back. It was kind of a strange deal, and so I just always kind of thought that it was probably I wasn't his favorite type of player, and that's fine. I wasn't the best defender in the world, and I think that he kind of liked the longer, lankier, athletic, rebounding, defensive shot blockers. But uh, and so when you go to the NBA draft camp and you're a 6'9" white guy that can and then you have a good draft camp and you get projected as possible first rounder and you're healthy and you're coming off a good year, you just never know when all that stuff's going to line up again. And so that was a decision that was really brutal. It was tough to do. But that next year I had quite a bit of back problems that next year. And I don't know how much I would have helped the Hoosiers with the back issues that I had my rookie year. And so it would have really been a shame to have stayed and not been able to help and then also lose any opportunities in the future. So it probably worked out. I mean, they went on to a championship game. I mean, I told Dane Five gives me all kinds of grief about not staying and maybe helping win a championship. And I was like, man, look what y'all did. Y'all got me out of there. I was, that I may have helped getting y'all there by getting out of there. Uh, and so that's always a interesting conversation anytime we get together and talk. But I think it worked. I think it worked out well for everybody. But I would have loved to have been a part of that run for sure.
For sure. And I mean, when you talk about what is probably your most notable moment as an Indiana Hoosier, it's got to be the buzzer beater against Michigan State. It's hard to say it's something else, but what was that game like, and what was kind of the feeling whenever you sank that shot?
Uh, you know, I had only taken one other game-winning shot attempt in my entire basketball career, middle school, high school, and it was the state championship shot that I missed in my junior year. So I was 0 of 1 for game-winning shots in my entire life, and it was for a state championship. And the second one I ever took was against Michigan State to win the game when they were undefeated and ranked number 1. And so I'm still to this day I'm one of 2 for game winning shot attempts. And so I actually ran into Zach Randolph about 2 months ago at an event, and I had a buddy of mine with me, and we walked in, and I didn't see Zach at first, and my friend goes, one of your arch nemesis is in the room. And I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, Zach Randolph's right over there. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And so I go over there, and I was like, well, let's go. I've got to go at least say hey. So I hadn't seen him since I probably played against him in some random summer camp or something. And so I go over and shake his hand, and I get ready to say, who I am and everything. And he looks at my friend. He goes, this guy right here made our life miserable on the ride home with Coach Izzo after he hit that shot against us in Bloomington. And I said, well, I think that you bounced back pretty well from it. But I said, one of the things I told him was, like, I had to make that shot because I missed a box out on him the play before that led to him being able to put him up. And so I had to get some redemption. So it was pretty special. And when they kind of put that compilation of highlights together that shows some of those game-winning shots and the people storming the court, that's always nice to be remembered for that and be a part of that history. The next day we came into practice, and you could see black sneaker marks down the wall where the students were like sliding down from the student section down the side of the white walls. And I just remember, and that is probably something that's never going to be something I experience again. I'm glad that I got to at least experience it one time.
That's incredible. I mean, yeah, we have at our house, we have these coasters. I'm sure you've seen them of it's like 4 coasters of iconic shots in IU
Yeah.
history. And that's one of them. And so I had to ask that. I was really curious about it, but that's a pretty wild story. And we'll segment over to the NBA now. You talked to just a little bit about it, but you did get drafted 16th overall to the Charlotte Hornets. Played a couple of seasons in the NBA. What was that experience like, just overall?
Well, being drafted was incredible. I'll never forget that they always try to find like some sort of little tidbit to say about a draft pick on the broadcast. And I remember Ernie Johnson on the broadcast. TNT had the draft. And they had found out at some point that I had like 65 hours of Andy Griffith show on recording. Used to record those. They used to have TBS marathons, and it would be like 17, 20 hours of it. And so I did. I had a lot of Andy Griffith shows on tape, and that was just something I'd kind of throw on when there's nothing else on television. And so Ernie Johnson says that, and I'll never forget. Charles Barkley just looks at the camera and says, "Just sounds like another country bumpkin to me." And I was like, that might have been the greatest compliment I've ever gotten. I appreciate that, Chuck. And so, going on and playing at Charlotte, my sons now, one's a sophomore and one's in 8th grade. They both play, and they love doing deep dives into NBA stuff and YouTube deep dives on players and drafts. And so I get all kinds of grief from them now. And so it's just, I can't really escape it. They were like, man, that was a great call by the Charlotte Hornets to draft you instead of Tony Parker. That really worked out great, getting drafted above Tony Parker. I'm like, yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. I was drafted above somebody that was a finals MVP. I'll just take that. And the one thing that the story that they do get a kick out of is that when Jordan was with the Wizards, we played against them in Washington, and me and Michael Jordan in that game combined for 53 points, and he had 51 of them. And so that's but I was 1 of 1 from the field. I didn't miss a shot that game. So who actually had a better game? But I have to say that there was just there's been a lot of moments in my life, including just playing the NBA, where I would just look around and I was like, it was kind of a Forrest Gump kind of career I had, where I would just kind of look up and be like, hey, there's Magic Johnson. I'm shaking hands with Magic Johnson. Oh, Bill Russell just walked by. It's just like, how did I get here? And one time we were playing a pickup game in New Orleans, and we're playing, and it's just like a lot of college kids, and Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf is there, and Baron Davis, and Jamal Mashburn, and Jonathan Bender, and we're just going up and down in this old gym in New Orleans. It's got a stage on one end, and we're playing, and as we're playing, Larry Bird walks in, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And even like, it was amazing. He was just there to watch, and he was there to, I think, watching Jonathan play some, and I was just amazed at all these elite NBA guys that were playing on the court, and some of these really good college players that were playing in this sweaty gym pickup game. How the intensity of how everybody was playing went up when Bird walked in to watch. It was great. It was just. I got up just enough nerve to go up and shake his hand, and just to say that I've shook Larry Bird's hand, and I mumbled something about, I appreciate what you did for the game. I don't know what I said, but I just was like, I just shook Larry Bird's hand. It's been a good day. So it was some interesting moments, but I was appreciative of all of them.
For sure. And I just want to get to a couple more things here. Let's talk a little bit about your book. In 2016, you published a book called Days of Night, How the General Changed My Life. What compelled you to write that book?
One of the things is that, and people ask me all the time, probably the number one question, what was Coach Knight really like? And I tell them, a lot of it, you probably have a pretty good feel for, but I compare him sometimes to Dennis Rodman, and people are like, what in the world are you talking about comparing Coach Knight to Dennis Rodman? And it's because of this. At some point, Dennis Rodman realized that people were there to kind of see him act like the character Dennis Rodman. And so Coach Knight, I swear to you, I'm not saying he didn't have a temper. I'm not saying that some of the stuff he said and did didn't come from a legitimate, genuine place. But a lot of things, he was a little bit more of a performer than what I think people realized. And so, you go to Penn State would usually have, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people at a game. We'd go to Penn State and they'd have 12,000 people there. And they weren't there to watch Jared Jeffries and Kirk Haston and, AJ Moye play. They were there because Coach Knight was there, and Coach Knight knew that. And so Coach Knott knew that. I mean, at some point he was going to put on a show, and that's why, honestly, I think that's why he didn't get a lot of technicals from referees, because I think a lot of referees realize, like, hey, we're part of this performance, and so one time he got so mad, and if you were watching on television, you thought, well, there's Coach Knott again losing his mind, and he comes over to the huddle, and I mean, just ranting and raving, losing his mind, cussing at this referee. And we're sitting there waiting for him to come over to sit in front of the bench. And he sits down as calm as can be and goes, that guy never has like me. This is what we're going to run. I mean, just completely flipped it like a switch. He wasn't mad at all, but he was kind of putting on that show. So yeah, I think there was a little bit of like trying to tell a little bit of that side of him, and just also he did have some negative stuff. There's 5 or 10% of what Coach Knott said and did that I can't really defend or say it was great, but like 85-90% of what he did was coming from a good place, and was coming from a place of helping players improve as people and on the court. And unfortunately, though, the media, I think, covered his bad 10% like 99% of the time. And so it was nice to kind of get some of those stories out there. And I just, my mom was an English teacher, and so she gave me a journal when I went to school and said, hey, write down some of the stuff that happens, write down some of the stuff. And I was like, whatever. And I kind of started doing it, and I kept writing more and more, and just kind of like, write down funny quotes he'd say and things. And I just kept all those notebooks and journals, and came across them in about 2014, and just thought, man, there's some pretty funny stories in here. I think that I'll try to see if I can put them together and see if anybody wanted to read them. And so that's kind of where it came from.
For sure. And I mean, did it kind of, so you kind of just sparked with that notebook, but after it was done, looking back on it, what was kind of your thoughts? Were you really happy with how it turned out, I assume?
Yeah, I thought that I think it serves as a pretty good snapshot of a interesting slice of Indiana basketball period, and Coach Knott's last 3 years at Indiana, and from a player's point of view, and just being able to get some of that story out there. And I've gotten some pretty interesting feedback from some of my former players that's played for me, and some of my friends. I was able to slide in there a few stories that I think that people would like, the one about Coach Knott falling in the Buffalo River because the boat turned a little too quickly, and he came. I knew that story, and I'd sat on that information for a while, and I never said anything to him about it. And then his birthday, he came in after practice, and he was in a pretty good mood. And as he was walking out of the locker room, I said, "Hey, Coach, I was gonna get you a life jacket for your birthday, but I couldn't find one your size." I just said something like that, kind of halfway saying it as he's walking out. I didn't have that much guts, but I had enough guts, and I didn't even think he heard me. And I kind of was looking around at my teammates, like, "Yeah." And then he came just bolting back in the locker room, and he came over to my locker, half smiling, half not. And he pointed a finger in my face, and he says, "If your bleeping friends knew how to drive a boat, I would have ever fallen in that river." And that was the last time I ever brought up that story. But yeah, that it just I think gave a few insights that people may not have seen otherwise.
For sure. And let's talk a little bit about the politics side of things. In 2018, you ran for the state house seat in Tennessee. You'd win the primary kind of barely, just by under 200 votes. But what really compelled you to get into politics?
Well, I've been in the public school system now for 18 years. I've been a coach and a teacher, and one of the things that you do when you're a teacher, you go on field trips with students. And so I actually, in like 2016, helped take a group of high school students to the Capitol. And I went up to the Capitol and just watched the day of session with watched them vote on some bills, and then they would bring the school group after session, take them down to the House floor, and you sit at the desks and you debate a bill. And I was sitting down there, it just kind of hit me. I'm like, this is where all the things that we can kind of complain about, or things that we think that should be done, and this is where the action takes place. This is where it happens. This is it. and I'd never run any. The last thing I'd run for was like treasurer in seventh grade, and I just sat there and thinking like I mean if the opportunity presented itself, I'd be interested in maybe getting into this one day and seeing and so the opportunity presented itself, and I thought it was interesting that at that point in time, and there's no active educators serving in the legislature in Tennessee, and so I wanted to be. I thought that if a group needed a voice, some public schools people needed a voice in the legislature, and so I ran. I was a heavy underdog, and I was outspent 2-1. I think my wife, I think we had probably raised about $9,000, and my opponents had about $50,000 each in the campaign accounts. And Coach Knight did a radio spot for me that helped. He said in the radio, I didn't know what he was going to send me. He said he had I asked him if he'd mind helping. He said, "Yeah, I think I got something that could help you." And I said, "Okay." So he sent me a audio clip that said, "I've known a lot of stupid politicians in my day, but Kirk Haston won't be one of them." And that was a radio ad I ran, and it got some pretty good buzz. And who knows, that might have been the 189 votes right there. But Coach Knight was good to help me out. And so it's been, I'm in my 7th year, getting ready to go into my 8th year as a legislator so far, and I feel like it's been a good experience, and I think it's benefited our area.
For sure. And is this something that you see yourself continuing to do? Do you think you'll continue to stay in politics? And I guess my follow up to that is, are you looking to, move up to maybe a different position? Or are you kind of very content with where you're at?
It's always something that's in the back of your mind when you have congressional seats open up and different opportunities. I'm pretty content where I'm at now. One of the reasons that I never did really dive into wanting to get into college coaching was just because if you get into college coaching, you become usually, unless you're very fortunate, you become a nomad, and you may be in one place or one state for a couple of years and find yourself moving. And one of the great things about the jobs that I've had is I've been able to, stay in Perry County and have, a stable, consistent place that my kids are going to school and experiencing. So going somewhere else right now doesn't really interest me, but down the line, you never know.
Absolutely. Answered that one like a politician for sure.
I tell people that I'm a statesman. I'm not a politician, and that's exactly what a politician would say. So yeah.
Now, let's talk a little bit about, before we close out here, about golf. Are you big into golf, or are you kind of, where's your position on it, I guess?
I'm one of the best 6'9" golfers in the state of Tennessee. I feel pretty confident in saying that. I, I, I I'm about a 5 handicap. I'm going to usually shoot in the upper 70s, but very capable of having a bad day and shooting 85, 86. But I'm usually going to shoot in the neighborhood of 75 to 79. But I have a few club championships under my belt. But the thing I'm really nervous about is I've never played in a PGA Pro-Am, and it's always, we go to PGA tournaments all the time. And I've always wanted to play in one, and I've never had an opportunity to. I am having a chance. I did get invited to play in a Corn Ferry Tour Pro-Am on the 21st in Knoxville. So that's already got me a little bit nervous about how I'm hitting my driver currently. I've got to figure out some stuff. I don't want to be paired up possibly with Blades Brown or Neil Shipley and be shanking it all over the course. So I got to get myself in some sort of game shape before that rolls around. But yeah, it's definitely something we enjoy doing, and we go to tournaments as much as we can to watch. We've been to Augusta, U.S. Open. Of course, we go to FedEx a couple times down in Atlanta. So it's just it's hard to describe to people how great it is to go see these places in person and how close you can get to the action. But it's a great sporting event to go to in person.
Absolutely. I've been went to the PGA Championship at Valhalla, and it was just insane to see those guys actually play,
We were
10,
there.
15 feet
We
from
were
you.
there. We were there. We might have walked right past each other. Yeah.
Probably did.
Yeah,
Um,
that was. I don't think that there will ever be another PGA Championship that's going to be quite like Rory announcing a divorce and then Scotty Scheffler getting arrested within the same like 48 hours. That was a pretty wild turnaround, and so yeah, that one will go down in history as one of the weirder ones that we've had in a while.
Yeah, I was sitting in class and my teacher, I have a pretty good relationship with him, and he said, "Yeah, Scotty Scheffler just got arrested." And I was like, "Nah, you're kidding," because I had talked about how I wanted to see him play all
Yeah.
week, and he's like, "No, I'm serious." And I was just, it was unreal. But what kind of draws you to golf? Like, what makes you passionate about it?
Well, I think I think the reason you see a lot of athletes go that direction, it you get so used to working on something, I've always been a little bit of a tinkerer when it came to like trying to find a little bit of something else in your shot or a position on a hook shot or something, and so when you're used to going into the gym and it's like 100 hook shots this way, 100 hook shots that way, 100 shots off the dribble, 100 set shots, you really have once you get used to that for 15, 16 years, it helps to have something to kind of fill that void. And so I just loved going out to the range and just like working on like how what does a draw feel like, what does a fade feel like, well, what if I do this with my grip, what if I change this, and so it just kind of suits my practice, my wanting to practice something, but also just fills that competitive void. I mean, I just it's just such a great feeling of not being able to have anybody else to blame, and you've got to control your kind of your mind and your heart and your breathing to like come through on things, and it's just it's a great feeling to have that nervous energy in you, and it's just hard to duplicate that anywhere else, and so to have that nervous energy in you and try to succeed through that is just a really fun thing to do.
Definitely, and I think it's kind of funny. I've had this is my sixth episode. Three of the six episodes, golf has been brought up at some point in time, and I no one that I've had on here is actually a professional golfer. But I think you are right. I think a lot of former athletes kind of just gravitate to the game.
Yeah, I've had, me and Bryce Drew when we were teammates, we would play some, and David Wesley, he played, and it's been it's just amazing the different people and the different connections you make. I got invited to a tournament a couple years ago, had no idea who I was playing with. And I had a buddy of mine. Me and him got invited, so I knew that I was playing with him. But we didn't know who we were partnered with at this tournament in at the Legends Club in Vanderbilt. And we get there, and I read the golf carts, and it's got my name and my buddy's name, Brent Henson, and on the other golf cart was Vince Gill. And I was like, "Are we really playing with Vince Gill today?" And so, and by the way, Vince Gill, absolute scratch golfer, unbelievable, just unbelievable. Like hits it 300 and just beats it and just can play. And to have somebody that you're used to hearing sing those beautiful songs and singing high up that mountain, and that to hear that same voice say like a string of 7 cuss words in a row, it was worth the day of going out to playing golf. I was not expecting that, but Vince Gill had a lot of Coach Knight in him, I have to say.
That's awesome, and I just want to thank you again for your time today, for coming on the show here. We had really cool conversation, so I thank you for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Once again, I just want to thank Kirk for taking time out of his busy schedule to talk to me today and talk to you guys about what it was like to play for Coach Knight at Indiana and what he's doing now. Just really an interesting story, and crazy how he went to Indiana and then was able to write a book and eventually become a legislator with the Tennessee State House. Couple quick announcements. First of all, shirts. I've had a couple people recently say that they would like more shirts, so we are going to be considering opening that back up for orders. So if you're interested, message me so I can get kind of an idea of how many people are wanting the shirts, and we'll take it from there. If you know a business or you are a business owner yourself and you would like to advertise, we are always looking for new advertisers. We offer a very competitive and affordable rates for advertising. So just contact me and I will get you those rates and we can work something out so that you can be involved in the episodes. Another thing I want to introduce is guest pitches. If you have an idea of someone that you would like for me to talk to, whether it's someone from Indiana, Kentucky, wherever they're from, send them to me and I will look into getting them on the show. I'm always looking for new people. And if you guys are able to give me some suggestions, that would help out a lot and also give you a chance to see who you are wanting. Also, make sure you follow me on all social medias at Beyond the Bench with Nick, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're going to post on there a lot more. Our posting hasn't been great, but we're looking to get a better involvement on those platforms as well. And also subscribe to the YouTube channel. It means a lot to see those numbers of subscribers going up. So if you would do that, it's right below this video. Very easy to do, and it would help me out a lot. Once again, I just want to thank everyone for their support and thank Kirk for coming on today to talk to me. And I'm glad that you were able to listen to episode 6 with Kirk Haston.